Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's very special Founder Fireside Chat with Jeron Paul, founder and CEO at Spiff. We're really excited to have Jeron on, really excited to be working with Spiff, and just wanted to provide a little bit of background on Modern Sales Pros for folks who maybe aren't familiar. Today's session is hosted by the team at Modern Sales Pros. Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest community for revenue leaders. So those are folks that are in sales and revenue operations, sales management, and then the related supporting disciplines. Our mission is to create an environment for our 22,000 and growing community members where they can answer the questions they may otherwise struggle to solve on their own and see around corners that they may not know are coming up. We do that through bringing on great speakers to share their stories like Jeron. We do that through robust online conversations through our forum. And in the future, we'll be returning to in-person events, hopefully real soon. For those of you who aren't members, you'll be invited to join afterwards. And we really hope you will. Everything we do is free for our members. And as is in the chat, we do have an amazing summit coming up. So if you do enjoy today's program, you'll get even more of that. We're focused on everything needed to take your go-to-market motion, instead of it being function out, really bringing it customer in and thinking through everything for and through that lens. But as I mentioned at the outset, today wouldn't be possible without the sponsorship of the team at Spiff. Interestingly enough, Spiff is one of the longest term sponsors of Modern Sales Pros. This is their 4th year sponsoring us. And it's been really exciting to get to know Jeron and the team and also see their growth as they've brought on so many wonderful and great people. But one thing that we've got to see through this close partnership is so much of what Jeron is going to talk about today in creating and imparting upon his entire organization from the top all the way down of really great thinking and first principles approaches to essentially help his organization think like mini CEOs. But with that, Spiff, again, thank you for the sponsorship, but enough about me. I'd love to have Jeron introduce himself and share the story really up until the point where Spiff was the idea.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. And I didn't even realize that we were one of the longest term sponsors of MSP now. That's pretty cool. I mean, you and I have had a relationship now going back years, which is awesome. I remember you coming out to our event in Salt Lake. That was a lot of fun to have you in SLC. So yeah, I'm actually calling you from my. I'm actually calling you. I'm here in Maine. My wife is from Maine, so you're catching me in a little bit of a cabin experience here. But I'm super excited to be with you here. So in terms of my background, bit of a serial entrepreneur, not I definitely am still learning and growing like crazy. I started my career actually at a consulting firm back east called Monitor Group. Went to Harvard Business School after that. Started several companies at Harvard. I kind of was one of those folks that recognized pretty early on that I wasn't going to be a Baker Scholar at Harvard, which is the top 2% of the attendees. You know, I mean, I love my classmates. I clearly was not in their league in a lot of ways, and so I quickly loved the environment and loved the networking and the professors, but quickly realized that hey, I'm probably going to go more of an entrepreneurial route. And so because of that, I actually started several companies at Harvard. It started one with a professor of mine named Jay Lorsch, which was called BoardLink. Ended up merging that into Thomson Reuters right after business school. And so I was there for a couple years, and then moved back to my home state of Utah, and was a VC actually for like 5 years as a principal at a firm called what is now called Signal Peak Ventures, and then rejoined one of the startups that I had kicked off at business school called Scalar. Sold that for a couple $1 million, and then started another company called CapShare, which we grew and sold to a company called Solium, which is now a subsidiary of Morgan Stanley, for like 20 million bucks. And so I've definitely, when I say I'm a serial entrepreneur, I've definitely had smallish exits. I'm definitely, they've been meaningful clearly to me and to those, I think to those individuals who've come along with me for the ride. I'm very proud of the fact that when we sold CapShare, we actually created 5 millionaires out of that sale, even though it wasn't that huge of an exit. And so certainly have had a great time, but I really am quite hungry to prove that we can go build something incredibly special here at Spiff. And we often call Spiff our magnum opus, our kind of most important work that we feel like we're creating as a. Evan gives you a little bit of my background. Thanks so much for the opportunity to introduce myself, Richard. I think you might be muted, Richard. I'm not hearing you. Sorry. That's weird. Hey, Rich, I have lost the ability to hear anything. Let me see if it's on my end. Apologies. I may need to leave and rejoin just really quickly because for some reason I can't hear anything. So, I guess other folks are saying they can't hear you in the chat. Sorry, everybody. I'm guessing we'll get this sorted here pretty quickly. I'm improvising. Great. Well, hey, let's see. I think he's gonna leave and rejoin there. All right, David, let's vote for some famous show tunes. I like that.
Back. Sorry about that. Rich, let's hear you.
There we go. How about this? Can you hear me now?
Hey, we can hear you great.
All right, success. Hey, and we got a guest appearance from Taylor. That's what we love about live events. We don't get the talk show moment of the animal, but we get Zoom connectivity issues. Can everybody, Jeron, can you hear me now?
I can hear you super well.
All right.
I think you're a little too loud.
Just a little bit excited here. I appreciate that that introduction, Jeron. One of the things, just to set the context for our audience, we're actually not going to have the interpretive dance. I'm sorry, we have to move on to the content. Just a couple notes on this. First and foremost, this is meant to be interactive. Jeron's got a great story and we've got a great set of topics that we're going to hit on. But if you do have questions throughout, feel free to put those in the Q&A panel, put those in the chat panel. We'll do our best to monitor those and take those as appropriate. And then I already see somebody's asked, the recording will be made available. It's about 24 hours afterwards. It'll show up on the Modern Sales Pros YouTube channel. The post-event page will also be the key takeaways from our conversation with any resources that Jeron here talks about. Now that you can hear me, shall we jump into it? What do you think, Jeron?
You got it. Let's do it.
I love it. I mean, we've been working with Spiff for so long now. What was it that kind of gave you the idea to do it as a serial entrepreneur? Like, what was it about this space, this problem that you're like, that's where we're going to go, build the magnum opus, for lack of a better word.
Totally. So I would say I'm like a bit of an Excel, jock. I kind of grew up in my business career using Excel a lot, and like so many of us. And I think a lot of the themes of my entrepreneurship have been centered around replacing Excel in complex business processes. So it's kind of like, hey, show me an Excel spreadsheet that is business critical and is complicated and that doesn't scale well, and I'll give you a business idea. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a theme, honestly, that a lot of entrepreneurs can use. And just go smell and sniff out those Excel spreadsheets in your orgs, and you honestly, you'll probably find 2 or 3 business ideas. And so that's really the theme that I've used in a lot of my last couple of startups. And the last one was a company called CapShare, and that was an Excel spreadsheet replacement for what's something called a cap table, hence the name CapShare. The idea was, hey, cap tables are complicated, they're messy. There's no single source of truth. They do honestly require, or they should be multi-tenant, meaning you should be able to share these things easily across different user groups with different levels of role-based access. and that wasn't available. And so we just built a solution to do that. And while we were building that, my co-founder, probably the most important co-founder in my life, one but most important colleague in my life is a guy named Matt Stapleton. You've met him, Richard. He's amazing. He and I have worked together for many, many years, and he was really running commissions at CapShare, but I was kind of running the sales team. And so we would have like these back and forth with the sales team, where it's like, my commissions don't look right. And we were spending an inordinate amount of time in an Excel spreadsheet, ding, 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 like trying to track and manage these commissions. And, at some point I just kind of said, like, look, I'm a software guy. I'm going to go build a proof of concept and automate this for CapShare. I did it. I wasn't totally thinking it would be like a huge business, but I had that in the back of my mind because I love Excel replacement technologies. And then I started doing a little bit of research. And I remember like when the lightning struck, I actually smuggled a little question into a poll that we were conducting of all our CapShare users. And I just asked them a question kind of off the beaten path. I was like, what's your commission? I think I said something like, please describe your commission process. Like, we were asking about like the survey was around like the tech stack for startups. And so we were asking like, hey, describe your commission process. And some guy wrote back and said, my commission process is like Victorian style manual labor minus the smog and adverse working conditions. And I was like, when I heard that, I first of all, I just like laughed. I don't know who that was because it was an anonymous survey.
Oh, no, I was going to say, was that the first Spiff customer? That would have been great.
Yeah, like he was so great. Whoever that was, like, I really want to give him credit for that or her, honestly, because it was anonymous. And so I really want to give that person credit. Because I've used that story so many times because I feel that actually that is a really good synopsis of what most people feel when they're trying to do commissions in Excel. And so that was when we, kind of said like, oh, we got an idea here. And it's so crazy, Richard, like literally I was still at CapShare. And so I was having this really anguish. I was like kind of anguished because I was like, man, this would be such a great business to go do, but I can't. I'm the CEO of CapShare and I'm all in on CapShare. And I'm not kidding, something around within a week or two of that happening, we got an acquisition offer at CapShare. And I was just like, oh man. And so I negotiated as part of the acquisition. I was like, hey, I really want to go work on Spiff's nights and weekends. I'd really like to leave like soon. And they said, well, we need you for a year. So I stuck around for a year post acquisition, but I did negotiate the right to be able to work on nights and weekends on Spiff. And then as soon as the year was up, I jumped out and started Spiff and brought Matt along with me eventually. Matt had to become the CEO there for another year. So they kept him around for 2 years, but I eventually pulled him out. So
it's interesting, right? Because if you think about Excel, I think the joke is, right, everything ends up in Excel at some point in time. And we don't think about it, but now automating it, I think that's a good first principle just from a business perspective, but also commissions is kind of like, unless you've done it before, you don't realize how much of a pain in the butt it can be. Multiple different levers that you may have, multiple different commissionable components, different teams, you start to scale. It's, as someone who's run commissions and worked with operations to run commissions out of a spreadsheet, to say it's a nightmare or a Victorian labor without the smog it's probably being generous to what it's like. It's pretty gnarly. And because you're also dealing with something that's incredibly important, right? There's people's compensation, and they take
compensation
it very seriously.
I so agree. And on your point about Excel, Richard, I actually think Excel is the best piece. It's the most successful piece of business software ever created. Like I think Excel is incredible. And I think it is that way for 3 reasons. I think number one, it's actually a low code platform. Like people don't think they're coding when they're working in Excel. You actually really are. I mean, you're using if statements, using ands and ors, you're doing complex calculations, you're having functions referencing other functions as in cells within cells within cells. I mean, it's a form of coding. It's just a form of coding that business people are super familiar with. Right. And number 2, it's a what you see is what you get editor, and it's a mini database. And I think when you wrap those 3 concepts together in this visualization tool that is updated in real time, I mean, think about that. That innovation happened in the 70s, like late 70s. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, honestly. It was a powerful innovation for solving a huge amount of business problems. And so huge fans of Excel here, but we also think I'm a big believer that Excel is very much in the waning years as a tool for automating at scale complex business processes. It just doesn't work. We need a new set of tools to automate complex mathematical and financial processes at scale.
Well, and I think it's one of the parts Excel is great for me, right? It's my workspace or it's your workspace, but transparency is really not there with tools like Excel. And as we start to think about, how you've created different organizations and how you get your organization thinking more like little mini CEOs, transparency plays a really important role in that, I would imagine.
Huge. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, we definitely, so maybe to transition to internally do you want me to kind of talk about how we think about mini CEOs and stuff?
Transparency, I think it's an important part of this, and I think it's a good segue, right? Like Excel lives on somebody's machine somewhere, and being transparent in your organization, that's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy. Like, we live in this wonderful time where I think, we're witnessing the democratization of a lot of things, and individuals are becoming much more empowered down at the personal level. And it's really easy to say, like, hey, you want to create a culture of CEOs. That sounds good. It's a nice soundbite. Obviously, like you obviously could create a disastrous working environment if there weren't clearly defined roles, and if everybody had the same amount of power to make the final call on complex decisions where there may be conflict. So, I definitely think we are big believers in this, like, thinking like a CEO, but we mean something very specifically when we say that. And we mean that, like, it's really important that everybody understand their sphere of responsibility. And but within that sphere of responsibility, they should be able to be completely empowered to think and act like a CEO, and to have ultimate control over that sphere of responsibility. And every single one of us has obviously control over our own selves and our own ability to make an impact in our job, even if we're not managing other folks. And so I don't know if you can see my screen here, but I kind of shared I've done a lot of thinking, because I've been a CEO now arguably maybe 4 times. I don't know, I don't know how effective I've been, but I've definitely been in the job for a while. And so I've had the time to kind of reflect on what a CEO does and what they should do really well. And for me, I've kind of boiled it down to these 4 things. There's some other things that, we could talk about, and I'm sure I can't wait to learn from some of the folks that are listening. And and I'm sure I'm not saying that I've got it nailed. I'm saying that this is a framework that's worked for me. I definitely am still in learning mode. But the 4 things that I see as kind of most critical for a CEO are: 1, you've got to really clarify the mission and what we at Spiff will often call the definition of victory. I got that term actually from my first job out of college, which was a consulting firm named Monitor Group. And definition of victory is a lot like a mission, but you not only have kind of a mission, but you also have a really detailed understanding of what it will feel like to achieve success. And you actually will often write out the specifics of how you've achieved success. And so I think it's very, very important that a CEO kind of set that for an organization: the vision, the mission, the definition of victory. The second thing is, I think you really need to, build a team and a culture, and that's critical for performance. And then you need to ensure that team has all the necessary resources that it would need to achieve that mission or definition of victory that you set. And then lastly, you just are, I call it, being the chief bottleneck remover. It's really important that you go around, identify any blockers to that achieving that mission, building that team, and getting the resources you need to achieve the mission. And you just kind of remove the bottlenecks, as quickly as possible, and continue to drive growth, and then continue to cycle through that. I really, so I think in a way, the CEO's job is actually very simple. So now, how does that apply to everyone? I mean, I honestly think in your sphere of responsibility, these four things are really what you can do to become a leader and to really make a massive difference in your organization, no matter what your role is. I don't care if you're working in the mailroom. I mean, seriously, you can define victory. You can build a team if you have one underneath you. If not, then you can be a great team member and build up your team around you and be a contributor, or to be what we call a culture add. Find a way to really add to the culture. Work hard to ensure that the team has the necessary resources to achieve victory, and then continue to drive growth toward that goal. So this is something that we talk about a lot at Spiff. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for letting me ramble there, Richard.
Oh, no, I love it. I think this is super interesting. It's a great framework for folks to think through. When you're thinking about, hiring, right? This has got to play an important part in that as you're bringing on, especially as Spiff has scaled, I mean, with so many great new people. How do you kind of frame this mindset up for folks as you're interviewing? That would be my first question.
Yeah, I think we probably are still, like a lot of companies are in rapid growth phase. I don't think we've got that perfected. I think I'd be lying to you if I said like we have this perfect process. We have hired an incredible team under an individual named Shiloh Riddle here, and she's done an incredible job of helping to, I think, operationalize and help get some of our culture documents out to folks as we're hiring them, so that they actually see things like this in advance, and then we just kind of ask some questions around it. But we don't have currently any kind of a checklist or anything like that. I know a lot of companies do. We don't have that yet. So I think that's an area of active development, to be honest. I mean, we've grown from just in the last 6 months. I think we've almost doubled, honestly. We're at 100. We're getting pretty close to 140 people at Spiff. And so I think it's been a bit of a strap in, hold on for the ride, and just hope that you don't get thrown. You know what I mean? Like I do think we're getting processes more and more in place now, but the growth has been so fast that sometimes that's been lagging a little bit.
Well, I think too, it's a good first principles thing to think about too, right? When we've had
Totally
other leaders from Spiff, it's a lot of the same. Maybe the language is a little bit different, but it's a lot of the same. Like, hey, are you going to just exist here? Or are you going to add to the culture? Are you going to be a good team player, or are you just going to show up and do your job because it's better than the other thing that you were doing before? And I think that's an important part about this. One thing I wanted to kind of look at on this is when we think about creating this culture, one of the things that I think is maybe not unique about Spiff, but certainly there's more thinking coming out of Spiff around how to align executive compensation to making sure you're creating the right type of organization, and the organization's achieving it's achieving the right definition of victory, to use the language here.
Yes.
How is that, how is compensation kind of folding into a lot of your thinking here?
Compensation is obviously like front and center for us. So thank you so much for asking, Richard. And by the way, I wanted to give you a compliment. I love that you often talk about first principles, Richard. And I think that's such a cool concept, and way of thinking. I studied philosophy as an undergrad. So at some point I'd love to kind of talk to you about what you mean by that, but from our conversations, I really think it's powerful how you often bring things back to first principles.
It's one of the things that we know with pretty much every topic that we've ever discussed in modern sales is the answer is it depends, and 99.999% of the time. So what we always try to make sure is we as much give people answers as we teach them how to think, and that's where the first principles kind of come into play. Where hey,
so great.
Let's framework this and talk about how to think about this problem instead of it just being but all credit goes to complete plug. My old chief operating officer, Dave Myers, imparted that into my brain as a way to think about problems, and it's paying dividends now. So full credit to him for that.
To Dave. Yeah, to Dave, no, I love that. That's so cool. And I love that it depends, right? And compensation's a little bit that way, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you just briefly some things we've done here at Spiff. So compensation is obviously, we make compensation software, and so it's a very important concept for us. And we actually give every single person at Spiff commission on every single deal. So I actually literally, as the CEO, get a commission check as well on every single deal. Yeah, we don't. So we don't. The sales team, because this is modern sales pros, like the sales folks actually get much larger commissions on the deals, to be honest. But the rest of us are on kind of a basic level commission plan. And it's done wonderful things for our culture, actually. I mean, I think it really aligns us all around the concept of bringing revenue in the door, driving growth, thinking about what the lifeblood of a company is. I mean, at the end of the day, a startup depends on revenue for its life. I mean, it's how you pay salaries. It's how you continue to grow and exist as an entity. It's the proof that you're creating value in a marketplace that's very dynamic and competitive, and where it isn't a given that every single company does create a lot of value. And so revenue is really important for us, and we, for every company as well. But I mean, we tie every single employee's compensation to revenue, and so it's a kind of a neat thing. We're at 130 people, so I don't know what our commission checks have looked like over the past couple of months. What I can tell you is last December, I got a commission check for like $300, and that's meaningful. I mean, I was like, I mean, it's a car payment, So like, I mean, it's kind of cool when the entire org is getting, a compensation check like that. And I feel like it's kind of a cool new age thing, because I think there's so much research now, Richard, and my last company as well. We focus so much on equity. Equity is amazing. It's super powerful, but when in terms of creating wealth, but really it exacerbates a power law curve where, the top 2 or 5 or 10 people at a company make bazillions, and everybody else makes, 20, 30 grand if the company does really well, which is a lot of money. But I'm saying you're not set up for life on that, right? And so one of the things we do try to keep in mind at Spiff is, how can we be a force for good in the world? I know commissions, like, look, if you want to, there are probably a lot more noble things to go do, but in our small way, we do try to encourage companies to have a broad-based commission plan, because it's a nice way of giving everybody a little bit of a share in the upside of the revenue that a company generates. So hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And there's a lot there, and it's funny too. Everybody wants to be part of sales when sales is really humming along, right? I mean, you've never had so many friends as when the sales team is like above quota, right? And then amazingly, when it's kind of on the other side, no one wants to hang out with the salespeople anymore. Back when you used to be able to commiserate. No, but what I think is interesting about this is a couple of things. It literally, like, you're putting your money where your mouth is with this. Hey, revenue is really important to our business. And as the sales team is very successful, so too shall everyone else be successful. Not just, hey, we're going to be able to hire more or add capacity or buy new tools or whatever, but no, you're going to get a little bit of butter on your bread for that, which I think is a cool concept. The other part, and you mentioned this, you kind of mentioned this a little bit in terms of the organization scaling, and think it's kind of a little bit of a novel concept. Do you expect to carry this forward as you maybe double again in your org?
Yeah, we have no intentions of stopping it ever. Yeah, I literally hope we're a publicly traded company and still providing a commission check to every single person in the company. It sounds very noble. I mean, just criticizing myself a little bit. I mean, it's pretty easy to do that if you make the commission checks really small, right? And so, but like we try to make it pretty meaningful, honestly. So I think it's like 1 or 2% of top line right now is what we put into that pool, and then we just literally divide it by the number of people, so everybody gets a little.
And it's a funky and fun retention tool too, right? Everybody gets to share in the benefit here. Want to come back, and there's some questions coming in, folks. We've got Jeron for about another 15 minutes. So if you've got questions, throw those in the Q&A panel. We'll get to them. But this is something, earlier on, you were talking a little bit about transparency and make sure you've got the right balance, right? It's tricky. But do you have anything where it's maybe a company-wide feedback loop, anything that you've seen from a framework perspective to help folks start to think about how to get feedback and create more of a transparent culture?
I mean, we definitely believe very strongly in transparency, and in terms of I'm trying to think of like mechanisms we have in place to encourage that. I mean, we're a very strong, and in fact, I can kind of share this here. Do you mind if I just share my screen here again?
Yeah, go ahead.
So like I have this like cultural deck. We have a very strong listening culture at Spiff. And by the way, I'm just, I shouldn't say this, but I literally had one of my executives who I love tell me recently that I'm like not a great listener. And this like cut me to the heart. I mean, it was like, because I was like, because, I wrote this slide. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a hypocrite. But we talk about these three levels of listening at Spiff. Level one is, hey, we don't cut people off. So like like we actually have a mantra at Spiff, which is like at Spiff, we never cut people off. And it's not 100% true. And I'll explain why it's not 100% true, but it's good to stick in the mind to like, remember people, okay, like we're listeners, we don't cut people off. And so that's level one listening. It's just don't cut people off when they're talking. Number two is actively listen. So it's like follow along with them. Try to think, don't be thinking about how you're going to respond to their, what they're saying. Like actually listen to what they say and play it back to them in such a way that they feel like they're totally understood. I feel like being understood and being heard is actually one of the most fundamentally, profoundly good feelings that a human being can have, actually. And I think a lot of things in the world get better if we actually just listen to people and make sure that they feel understood. And then we have this concept of like level 3 listeners, which are master listeners, right? And they actually, if you imagine yourself, you're in a dialogue or even a debate with someone, a master listener will be so focused on you that they're actually helping you create your best possible argument against them. And that's a wonderful thing to be engaged with the master listener, because you end up both learning, I think, much faster. We also have this thing called a 2-minute rule. So like we will kind of, like, because there are some people that if you have a total listening culture, there are some people that will just hold forth for like hours and hours and hours, you know what I mean? And so like, we're kind of like, hey, in general, you should be able to get your point across in 2 minutes. I give this as an example of a mechanism we use to create transparency. And what that means for us is like transparency is, it's definitely like not hiding things. But for us, it also means like creating a really safe place for every person to have a voice and for every person to be able to say what they need to say. Other, ethical things that we do around transparency, we absolutely have like, whistleblower protocols, and every single person gets access to a board member's name. So if I ever did anything to a board member's email, so if I ever did anything as a CEO that they were worried about, they can literally just email my boss, So we try to have some mechanisms that really foster transparency. But our entire business of commissions is focused on increasing transparency for reps. I mean, reps can literally click through every single calculation in their commission statement. There's not a single step of calculations in their commission statement that we don't make transparent. And so hopefully that gives you a sense of some of our thinking around transparency.
I think that's a great answer. I love the 2-minute rule too. I think we've all worked with those people who really like to pontificate from online, and you're just like, all right, cool, thanks. Let's talk about this for another 7 minutes here, so you can speaker. It's a good forcing function. I think the other part too with this, back to Jeron's point, right? So much of this is being heard. And if you build this into who you are as an organization, that feedback loop gets much shorter, because these conversations have, Jeron, to use your language, right? There's a safe space. It's part of, it's just part of who the culture is versus, some organizations where it's the sales team is a bunch of hired mercenaries and the marketing team is off doing their thing and product is like, what the heck is going on over there? Building this in from the beginning, and I'm sure we all know those dysfunctional organizations, but building this in from the beginning feels like a smart way to make sure you're getting the generally an honest take on what's going on organizationally. Back to what you were saying at the start of this, like, hey, you got feedback, Jeron, you're not being a great listener right now.
Yep. It's rough. It was really rough. I mean, I actually, like, if you'd asked me beforehand, I would have said like, no, I'm a really good listener. So, unfortunately, I've obviously got a lot to work on still there. So
it's good. A continuous improvement. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, continuous improvement, Kaizen.
Another live question coming in here, and this is actually back to a point you were making before about the organization, the whole organization getting comped. This is more of a, where do you think it's going? right? So if the North Star that companies are looking for here is value achieved by solving customer problems, how do you see compensation evolving to create the right behaviors, right? Because it's not just sales, it's not just marketing, it's not just customer success, it's not just product, it's all of these organizations work together in harmony. So how do you see compensation evolving?
Evolving. It's an amazing question. And and look, I mean, maybe I'll take a kind of a 10-year, 5-year, 1-year type view here. Maybe I'll start with 1, 5, 10. In like clearly Spiff is a really big force for increased. By the way, sorry, it looks like maybe you guys can't see me very well anymore. Sorry, there's a little sunlight on my camera there. Spiff is obviously trying to be a pretty big force for transparency with regards to incentive compensation everywhere, and so I think what we're trying to do to evolve compensation that way is like you can bet that Spiff's going to continue to make things more transparent. We're going to continue to try to get data and information and even money into your hands faster and faster. So like we're very excited about the prospects of like some real-time commissions that we can get to folks. So actually setting up our system's already real-time in the sense that you can know your commissions within 15 minutes of closing a deal. And we're trying to move that to within to seconds, or even while you're even speccing out a deal in your CPQ system. So like there's definitely an increased desire to get to shorten the distance between hey, a deal closing or a deal even being proposed and knowing what your payment on that deal would be. But we also want to actually truncate the distance between deal being closed and the time that the money's actually in your account. So, I think there's a lot of interest on our side to like experiment with some real-time payments, at least maybe with some spiffs that are real-time, and see how that helps motivate folks. We're a big believer. We've done a lot of research, or we've looked into a lot of research around the power of real time and motivations, and it's actually pretty enormous. So there's about a 30% increase in behavior in performance when folks know that they're going to be compensated and get the reward that they were seeking faster than if they have to wait for it for a month or 30 days. And so you can bet in the near term you'll see more transparency and more real time out of Spiff. In kind of the 2 to 3 year time frame, we really want not even like in the next 30 to 90 days, you'll see some of our first MVPs in this area. But we really want to provide tools to make Spiff feel a little bit more like the Strava for business. So I don't know if you're familiar with Strava or Runkeeper or some of these really cool, but we view Nike has a mantra that I absolutely love. They say, if you have a body, you are an athlete. And I love that. And I view sales reps as athletes. I view them as really amazing individuals. And the thing I hate about gamification is it feels like you're treating your sales reps not like athletes, but like guinea pigs. And so we really want to create more of a Strava-like gamification experience for reps, where it's more of an opt-in. They feel like they're in control of their future. They're setting their own goals. They're analyzing their own performance and looking for ways to improve. And you're just giving them these incredible tools that help empower their ability to receive more compensation. So that's obviously a huge area. Kind of looking more further afield down the road, I mean, we're in an interesting spot as a species where, compensation is, probably not fair, and so not probably, like it's
not fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, right? And so and we really are looking, I think we're all looking forward to that time to where maybe the world has solved some of these issues and people are receiving the type of income to where they can live the lives that everybody can live more of the life that we would hope everybody on this planet can have. And I think how we want to be like a little bit of a bridge to that is, incentive compensation and commissions kind of got a bad rap from some of these banks that were paying people tons and tons of money to basically have people like fudge their income to debt ratios so that they could, sell more loans and stuff like that. So I'm not saying commission's always perfect, but there is a really good side to commission, which is, hey, if we create some value as a company, we're actually sharing that value back with the people who helped create that. So again, it's this idea of like democratizing incentive comp and like making it more of a widespread thing. You know, I mean, why wouldn't we, if we're all creating this revenue together? I mean, the product team helped too. Sales does amazing stuff, but obviously the product team helped to create that revenue too. So, you know, I do think Spiff looks for opportunities to kind of broaden out that. Look, we're looking for ways to democratize some of that compensation a little bit more as well. So hopefully I gave you a sense roughly of how we're thinking about it.
No, I think that's an awesome perspective. And I think the point of, you know, sales reps being coin operated or guinea pigs is, I think the further we get from, you know, the early days of SaaS, that's going to look more and more quaint and be like, oh, that was, bless our hearts, we tried.
Yes.
I also think the consumerization of what's going on just in the B2B landscape in general, the ability for me to opt in to analytics of myself and my behaviors, like people are used to doing that in the consumer world. Like you're saying, like Strava or others, it's a very exciting time to be there. I want to double click into one kind of area of this, and it's around products and compensation. I mean, actually like product managers and all of that, right? With the rise of some organizations going really, really hard into product-led growth.
Yes.
Does product become more and more of a revenue-centered discipline than just like we're thinking up great ideas and writing them out on whiteboards and building product requirement documents? Do they start to move more and more into a revenue-minded, you know, evolution of the discipline? Well, like, what do you think on that?
I mean, what a great question, and I'm super interested in your thoughts, Richard. So like I'll give you my 2 seconds, but I actually think with MSP, you're probably at the center of a lot of this thinking. I would think, you know, I love it. I mean, look, product-led growth is amazing. Spiff isn't quite there yet. So, you know, as just our company isn't quite there yet, where we can do that in spades. And for us, it would probably mean going after a little bit more of this SMB side of the market, as opposed to some of the enterprises that we're closing right now, where I don't know that a PLG approach is really going to work when you're trying to automate commissions for 8,000 reps. I mean, there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of security stuff we have to jump through hoops. It's tricky where you could literally just give them the tools, they can like configure it all themselves. Now, we actually feel like Spiff is on an ease of use path where we're every quarter we're like massively making the system easier to use. So I wouldn't be surprised if we can get to a PLG solution. And no, I'm going to rephrase that. I know we will. I don't know if it's next quarter or if it's a couple quarters out. We're growing really fast right now. But you know, I've also often thought about PLG too as like, hey, does this threaten the existence of sales reps, right? I mean, if you have a company that's 100% PLG companies typically don't have the same level of sales teams that non-PLG companies have. If you really look at it though, PLG is a wonderful tool, but most PLG companies end up adding a sales team actually as they scale and as they want to move up market. And so I don't personally see it as like a scary thing. I see it as a very complementary thing. And I think every company should have a PLG strategy, or at least have actively looked at it and dismissed it for the right reasons. Spiff is very much in the camp of like, we have a strategy here and we're marching against that strategy. It's really around increasing ease of use of our product. And as that ease of use goes up, we can increasingly make the system available to a growing group of folks that might be more interested in a PLG type approach to closing on our system. I'd love your thoughts though.
It's a big gnarly ball of wax, which is why I asked the question. And I think like my personal perspective is you've got different types of product leaders in the world. You've got product leaders that can solve $10 million problems. You've got product leaders that can solve $200 million problems. And
so true.
Those different product leaders also bring a different component to it. But like my overarching belief kind of aligns with what you were saying, like your product should get closer and closer and closer to nearly self-service, to self-servable. That does not mean that your go-to-market motion needs to be aligned with that. But I think it's a more deliberate decision now than it was maybe 5 years ago.
I so agree with that.
Where you could subsidize, and I mean, you've been through this enough times. you can subsidize really, really bad go-to-market with VC dollars.
Yep.
And that, I think, you know, unless you're crypto, blockchain, something or other now, it's a little bit trickier. No offense to anybody that's doing crypto blockchain stuff, but it's a little bit trickier to subsidize that maybe inefficient go-to-market motion. So I see product having more. It's not just an ivory tower. I'm going to build this and I think people are going to use it. It's also now in that PRD or in that product requirement doc, there's probably something about, I think this is the revenue opportunity here. That feels,
I love that, Richard.
I mean,
it feels like it to me too.
And that's probably the next right step. I don't think, like Jeff Bezos says, the consumer expectation, like they never want to pay more. And I think another term is that, like, salespeople, like the role needs to continue to evolve. And even if you're fully product led, the salesperson becomes more of a consultant and a shepherd to, this is how you use the thing. This is how else you could use the thing. And I think, you know, HubSpot's probably blazing a pretty big trail with some of this, where they've got, you know, what is it, 100,000 customers with an average sale price of less than 10 grand. Just do the math on that. And they're not hiring linear AEs to sell more. But I think it moves in that direction a little bit. That's probably worthy of a whole nother conversation. Like, what the heck? What does product led do to product discipline? What does it do to compensation? How does it change?
It's such a cool thought, though, and I agree. That'll be our topic for another day. But I do love your point about, I do feel like B2B software there's really a consumerization of B2B software, and this is very much in line with that as well, where, you know, people spend a lot of time on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever they're doing in their, like, after work, and then they hop on. I don't want to embarrass like a partner, but like they hop on like some B2B software platform, and they're just like, this sucks. You know what I mean? Like, this is so bad. And I do think Spiff is, you know, we actually are pretty we're pretty into design thinking at Spiff. We hired a really amazing designer named Albert Kandari to head up our UX, and he was like our third or fourth hire. I'm not kidding. So we've from day one, we are pretty all in on like design thinking and how important that's becoming to B2B software. So anyway.
There's a few organizations too, and I'll call out another one of our sponsors that we work with here. So Spiff, you can see it. Proposify is another organization where it's like they have a chief brand officer, and they're not that big of an organization, but like you can feel it from the second you land on the website, versus maybe others in the space where you're like,
like,
all right,
the
cool.
job.
I guess. Yeah. So this is what Windows Server 2003 looks like. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're over time now, folks. I know there's a couple more questions. So Jeron, maybe we can rapid fire through a couple of these and then wrap here.
Sure.
So one question here from Jonathan, and Jonathan, great question here. You know, when organizations, when you're talking to them about transparency and kind of spreading the wealth like that, is it more because they think it's just kind of this objective, moralistic, right thing to do, or is it tied to maybe some other reasons like improved performance or otherwise?
I mean, Spiff, you know, I can speak for Spiff. It's certainly a combination of both. I mean, we feel like it's the right thing to do, but it's absolutely tied to performance. I mean, it's one of these wonderful, you know, correlations in life where the right thing to do is also the best thing to do for your business. That isn't always true, and in this case it very much can be. And so that's how we look at it at Spiff. I mean, I wish, Jonathan, that I could tell you that every company is doing this. You know, it's very rare that you'll find a company that really has what we call a broad-based commission plan, that they're going to commission every single person on every dollar that's earned. So Spiff's very much in a very distant, you know, very small minority there. But, you know, that's certainly a goal we have. And regardless, most companies do have a form of incentive comp, right? For almost every position too. And Spiff considers, if it's incentive comp, we kind of consider that within our wheelhouse. So, you know, like MBOs and bonus plans, those are things that Spiff would love to help companies with.
I love it.
Putting in a
Well,
little plug there for us.
no, it's fine. And if you want to hear more, we've actually got Tanner Lacey from Spiff joining us next month on during our Revenue Excellence Summit to actually talk about a little bit more of the data behind kind of architecting new and exciting compensation models. So if you enjoyed this conversation but want to dive in a little bit deeper, join us next month with Tanner. But Jeron, we're over time. This went by super fast. I know you're really busy, and I really appreciate you taking some time to share your perspective and share your story with the Modern Sales Pros community. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Wonderful time. Wonderful spending time with you again, Richard. Look forward to doing this again soon.
Likewise, and the good part about it is I'm sure we'll have Netflix ordering the sequel real soon.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Excellent.
All right,
Jeron,
guys.
everybody take care. Stay safe. Talk soon.
Thank you. Have a great day. See you, everybody.